Throughout my life, I've always said that morality is entirely subjective, that there's no concrete laws that can be proven to exist within morals. Morals are something that are taught, not something that are inherent. Now don't get me wrong, I know that mutual aid is inherent to human biology and nature. What I'm saying is that morality, the belief of right and wrong, is entirely socially constructed by our society that fits a very narrow norm of what's socially acceptable and what's not. And it's done so in such a way as to shield those who have committed the worst of crimes by saying that they're not immoral, but that those who speak out against them, those who speak out against the state, those who speak out against those who rule them, are the immoral ones. That morality is decided by a transcendental entity. Not the case. It's instead decided entirely by the state, the centralized entity of law that governs everyone. And individual states have different moral codes. For example, in a Sharia state, what is considered moral is what is considered religious there, while in secular liberal countries, it's not considered immoral to steal billions of dollars from workers or to deprive people of private property, allowing them to die because one wants to hoard that property. But it is immoral, however, to resist arrest from police officers, or to commit oneself to harmless drug use, or to advocate for workers' self-management, and so on. The laws aren't set democratically, but this also applies to moral codes. Morality thus has shifted over the years. What was completely normal a few hundred years ago is now unacceptable, and what was unacceptable is now completely normal. We're not challenged to think outside of the moral box because our ideas of what is good and bad are so linear and black and white. It's just, these people are evil, or these people are good, and there's no in between. At least most of the time. We're taught that killing is wrong. We're taught that theft and looting is immoral. We're told all these things, but without context. What makes them immoral? What about the circumstances? Context is important. When I originally watched Philosophy Tube's Elon Musk video, I had a strange fascination with ideas he got at that he didn't explore more. You see, he was talking about morality in relation to people like Elon Musk, in relation to liberal communists, people who are really rich, wealthy, obviously part of the ruling class or elites, but pretend to be altruistic, pretend to be hip and cool and socialistic and so on. You get the idea. In regards to their moral stances, it's rather irrelevant what they say, it's their actions that Philosophy Tube was getting at. You see, Oliver Thorn understood that just because you give away like 1% of your overall income once every 10 years, even if you have billions of dollars, it doesn't really change anything, does it? At the end of the day, the fact that you have as much wealth as you do means that a lot of people are going to die because they don't have the privatized materials of survival in their arms. By holding such a massive amount, an enormous amount of money, are these people, these millionaires, these billionaires, killing people? I mean, they clearly don't need the money that they have, or anywhere near that much money. And they got it illegitimately. They got it from stealing from people or inheriting it. But nonetheless, they still have it. Should they give it away? Well, most people would agree, yes, they should. But are they immoral? Are they serial killers? Because they hoard so much money. Now, when you think of a serial killer, you think of somebody who goes door to door, or in some cases, night to night, stabbing people to death, shooting people to death. I mean, we obviously demonize these people, because they're overtly evil, right? I mean, of course they are. They're serial killers. They kill people in cold blood. They get out daggers and guns and swords or whatever and murder people. They've got to be the most immoral of all. But they aren't. Because serial killers usually only kill a few dozen people at most. A serial killer can't wipe out thousands of people. A serial killer can't kill as many people as a ruling class elite can, or as a state can. Let's think about this. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, an electoral dictator, he's the one casting a war on foreign countries. He's the one denying immigrants enter into his country. He's the one putting people in cages. He's the one denying people healthcare. He's the one who could stop all the poverty and declines in life expectancy due to such poverty. if he just shifted the policies a little. When you think about it, isn't he a mass murderer? And he is. He's an electoral dictator, a fascist, if you will. His purpose is to protect the ruling class, the elites, not the common folk. So how does that come down to popular culture figures like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and plenty of wealthy celebrities? Well, they sort of have the same power. We understand that nowadays in our neoliberal societies, privately owned corporations have just as much power as the state, especially considering that they bargain with the state. They trade. The state provides it protection and makes sure the workers do not seize such means of production, and in return, business is shared around. Properties are produced for the sake of the state, for the national interests a society has. A very clear-cut example of this is the various never-ending wars in the Middle East. They're powered by private corporations and businesses making money off of supplying arms. They supply all the materials, the resources, the nuclear weapons, the armor, the guns, and so on, because they make money off of it. And they make sure, that being the state, that the wars never end so both parties can get what they want. The politicians get wealthier, the private owners get wealthier. Statism and capitalism are thus what are causing these wars. They're the main driving factors. It's not a war of heroism. These aren't wars of never-ending heroism. There's no heroism in it. There's nothing heroic about it. It's just mass slaughter of innocent people for private profit. So, because employers can make money off of the suffering of so many people, don't we point fingers at them? Don't we say, you're the most immoral in this world? When we think of immoral people, why is it serial killers? Serial killers kill nowhere near the amount that politicians and capitalists do. But here we are. We're not focusing on the real rulers, people who actually own us as private property. We're focusing on people we've never been killed by, never been hurt by. We're focusing on serial killers. We're focusing on mass shooters even. These people are microscopic at the end of the day in comparison to the overall harm done by the state and capitalism, the capitalist state. There are far more people who die due to healthcare privatization in the United States than there are people murdered by one another. Far more. It's the same with states like South Africa. Poverty is the main killing factor, not murder. And on top of that, poverty is what drives murder a lot of the time, and theft. Well, actually all theft pretty much, because that's an exclusively financial thing. Hell, it's even found that serial killers are doing what they're doing for financial causes. Because we live under neoliberalism. We have to survive. All materials are privatized. All goods and services privately owned. Because private property demands you take it. Your extremism to a new level. You have to go out and ruin the lives of others. So are the serial killers to blame? No. Society, well, yeah, a little bit. Okay, they did some bad stuff. That out of the way. Society as a whole is to blame. Society as a whole. Oh, the way capitalists conduct business. The state which holds it all together. This is where all the immorality lies. All of it. In fact, when you look at it this way, murder and theft are just byproducts of the global neoliberal system. What people in Nigeria are worrying about is not the fact that somebody might axe them. They're not worried about murder or anything like that. They're worried just getting day to day, surviving, worried about making it through the month alive. When you're that poor, when you're that deprived of all resources, when the means of production are very rarely of high quality, there's a lack of industrialization, there's a lack of aid from different countries, you're stuck in a society where it's not your fault you're poor, it's your employer's fault. It's the same with Iraq and Syria. The war is terrible, but it can't kill near as many people as privatization could. And it does. Privatization kills quite a lot. Pollution, for example. If we take into account the amount of death that's caused through pollution by privately owned factories that are permitted to operate by the state undemocratically against the will of the working class, the mass murderers of India and China are the industrial capitalists who own such factories, who produce such pollution, all in the name of private profit. 5 million people die worldwide every year from water privatization. It would cost $150 billion every year to fix this globally, so that everyone could have clean, drinkable water. If the world's billionaires made $1.4 trillion in 1 year, their wealth combined, aren't they collectively responsible for 5 million deaths every year, which stacks up to 97 million deaths every 20 years. Water privatization is possibly the most evil thing on the planet, the most immoral thing on the planet. Water, a resource that falls from the sky, where the world is 75% water itself, requires no labor to produce. It should be free, it should belong to everyone. If you're a mutualist who believes that value should be derived from labor, you must admit yourself that privatizing water is immoral and cruel, unnecessarily cruel. Every society does this. Every state does this. Because this private property is protected by a government, a centralized legal authority. The police will arrest you if you dare to access what should rightfully belong to everyone. But because the police work for the state, which maintains that private businesses and capitalists should be able to sell the water, make profit off of private property that is really originally common property, this amount of people are allowed to die. Elon Musk is one of those billionaires, one of those many billionaires, and every single billionaire in this list are all responsible in one sense or another for the sheer amount of death we see under capitalism. Early estimates put clean water worldwide at only $10 billion a year. Considering how much is spent on war for profit, how much is spent needlessly, we could solve all the world's hunger and dehydration, and just general death created through privatization. If a tiny percentage of the population were to donate some money, or we didn't spend it on useless things and actually gave it away to people who needed it in the third world, where conditions under capitalism are even worse than they are in the Western world. You see, Elon Musk, one of the many billionaires, this time very much incorporated into popular culture today, is what you would identify as a liberal communist. He's obviously an extremely powerful capitalist. He has a lot of employees working for him. He's treated just as this friendly entrepreneur guy. You know, someone to aspire to. That is, in our modern Western world. But why aspire to be someone like Elon Musk who didn't even create the things he claims title to? The workers did. They always have. And their creations were created by someone else. And that person's creations, the means of production they used, were created by someone else, and so on. And eventually you'll go back to somebody creating the first materials that we all use today. Somebody's property today is always the property of another, someone who made it. Everything belongs to everyone because everything is created by all. But capitalists drive through this. They have a social Darwinist approach to economics. And this reminds me a lot of how fascist dictators were idealized in their countries. The same way people like Elon Musk are perceived. You know, fascist dictators in the past. Now that sounds like a weird stretch, but hear me out. There's a thing called cult of personality, and it's when a society worships one deity or one ruler, one individual of great importance. They look up to them as though they're immortal, perfect human beings, without flaws. It's an unhealthy obsession, a fandom, if you will, but nonetheless, it occurs. It occurred with Adolf Hitler, it occurred with Benito Mussolini, it occurred with Francisco Franco, and really any fascist leader. They looked up to these people as saviors from what they perceived to be Jewish communism. They looked up to these people as the saviors of the New World, saving them from progressivism and immigration and cultural Marxism and, so on. If you grew up in one of these societies at the time, these extremely right-wing authoritarian societies, you would grow up believing that the savior, that being the ruler who governs you, is your hero, that they're truly the perfect human being. They're placed in their hierarchical position for a reason. You believe, you perceive, they've earned it, and their position is just like the vertical power structure that Elon Musk rides on, and that entrepreneurs all over the world ride on. And so what our modern society has done is take an extremely antagonistic, totalitarian idea and rebrand it. If you've read 1984 or Society of the Spectacle, you'll understand that you have to mask, you have to conceal a ruler through clothing. You have to get the king to wear the people's clothes, and thus they'll seem far less controversial. What they're doing, their immoral activities, will cease to prevail in your mind, and you will submit to believing these people are just ordinary working class individuals, despite being a part of a completely different class. even though you're very much oppressed by them as an entire collective class with different interests that contrast with that of the workers. Because they're so ingrained into popular culture and normalized and made memes of or whatever, you don't perceive them like a fascist dictator, but they still play the role of one. They still do, no matter how you see it. Oliver Thorn never touched upon it, but I do genuinely think that liberal communism is the worst form of capitalism, because it's a mask, a disguise. And although these dictators in the past, these overt fascists, were blunt in their fascism, in their totalitarianism, people like Elon Musk, wealthy celebrities, entrepreneurs, and so on, can get away with their misery cast upon the world. If you were walking up a mountain and someone slipped and they were gonna fall off the mountain and die, would you help them? You would, because that's the moral thing to do. But you're not the one that pushed them off in the first place. So if you don't help them, if you turn around and walk away, are you moral or immoral? I mean, to the average person, immoral. We understand that it's pretty simple and easy to just help that person up so they don't fall off the cliff and die. But they make exceptions when it's happened on a widespread basis. In the case of billionaires who hoard wealth, yes, they're not going up to people and stabbing them in the streets. They're not going to people's houses and killing them. They're just letting them die. They're permitting it. They have the ability to resolve all the suffering, but they don't. They collectively don't. They don't even do what they can with the amount of money that they have. They don't attempt at all to change anything. They're reactionary. They don't want the world to become a better place. They want it to stay the same, or degenerate into a worse state of capitalism than what exists now. Are you considered extra moral for helping that person not die, hanging on to the cliff? Is there such a thing as positive morality and negative morality? I just don't think so. Just like the political spectrum, where anything outside of egalitarianism is clearly on a path, a spectrum, to social dominism and the devaluing of life, morality is sort of the same. In varying degrees, all human beings are immoral. If I save people from a burning building, 50 people let's say, but then I gun down 10 innocent people afterwards, not the people I saved, am I moral or immoral? No, I'm immoral. Very much, because I just killed 10 people. Saving the individuals that I came across in that burning building was just basic human decency. There's no such thing as positive morality. So when you put this into perspective, each human being, including myself, is immoral in various degrees. We're immoral in different measures. Nobody can be good, nobody can be an angel, because no matter how much you help the world, even at the expense of yourself, that's just normal. That's what you're supposed to do. The fact that you would, to any extent, do something to harm others brings down your morality. And so what I think is that human beings are actually on a negative spectrum of morality in very much varying degrees. Fields apart, you have people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, and so on, often made memes of, who are on the lowest bar of negative morality because they've allowed the most suffering to occur. You see, I don't know if that was at the back of Oliver Thorn's mind when he was making the video. I don't know if he wanted to take the idea of subjective morality further, because I do believe this subjectivity is what makes morality so complicated. You can't put an objective mark, okay, this person is this immoral precisely. It's all over the place. But what I can say is that if you're willing to point out that somebody like Hitler was evil, that he committed war crimes, he committed the Holocaust, he did all this terrible stuff, then you would have to admit that the billionaires who hoard wealth are even more immoral, because they've allowed a higher portion of the world to die. In other words, not acting is what's killing people. Capitalism slaughters more than anyone could ever intentionally kill off, although I do believe there is somewhat of a deliberate mentality behind it. Obviously, people are aware privatization is going to kill a lot of people, but the sellers of property need to make money, and that's the cruelty of capitalism and markets.
Every penny of a billionaire's fortune is a penny of unpaid work that someone else did. In addition, and this is a big deal whether you're a Marxist or you're not cool, liberal communists have every incentive to protect their wealth and the means by which they acquire it. and that means getting involved in politics, and they do. It's common knowledge now that old Elon gives millions to both of America's political parties, and although they aren't both exactly the same, they do both support capitalism. He also discourages his... maybe that's slightly unfair, or at least potentially legally dodgy. Elon, mate, is it fair to say that you discourage your employees from unionizing? Well, you don't encourage it.
I think I've said all that needs to be said. If you would like to support me financially, you can always go over to my Patreon. Leave me a few bucks if you want. And in regards to Oliver Thorn's channel, PhilosophyTube, please subscribe. He is a fantastic leftist content creator, and I'm watching his videos religiously.